I'm actually looking forward to this episode. This gentleman that we got today is a friend, and he is very knowledgeable in the business structure LLC space, and I'm excited to get this going. But how are you doing, Pansy? Tell us a little about what's going on with you right now. You're in your car and you're doing something with a property?
Yeah, I'm a hot mess right now.
Okay.
I am helping another investor friend from our community um, take care of some Section 8 um, things around their tenant's place that
Okay.
kind of handed to them from a previous owner. So,
Okay.
anyway, it's a lot of work, and neither one of them are in state, and I'm one of the only people that stepped up to try to help them out. So that's
Well,
what
that's
I'm
really
doing.
good of you. Yeah, Pansy's been out there lugging, like, helping to transport aluminum and all this stuff. She's been helping take pictures and all kinds of stuff for these folks. So she's stepped up and helped them with this property, which is really cool of her to do. Sub two student, by the way. Um, so that's awesome. Well, and how long can you stick with us? So you're gonna have to jump off here pretty soon, right?
Probably as soon as Tommy comes on, unfortunately, but
Okay.
you guys, I'm sure you won't have a problem carrying us. And then I'll pop it back in a little bit if I can on my drive and listen.
Okay. Sweet.
Thank
Well,
you very much, Tommy, for being here.
yeah.
Of
Thank you,
course.
Tommy.
Thanks for having me.
And by the way, we are going to be, and I think we announced this last time too, but we're going to be at Squad Up this not next week, but the following week we're going to be at Squad Up. So we're excited to see everybody there. And for those of you guys who don't know what Squad Up is, go look it up. It's Pace's big meetup that he does
Oh,
every year. And it's it's going to be a big to do basically. There's going to be a lot of people there, and we're going to be doing our next probably couple episodes at the next few meetups that we're at. So, and by the way, Pansy was right. Pansy was right. The last full episode that we had up was 50. Then we did 50 so
this
wait a
is
second.
51.
So yeah, so we did 51 was. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna recant that. Actually, 50 was with Chad Yesilova. 51 was with Roger, and this is 52. So I was right. You're wrong.
Well, then you had it wrong on
The
something else
previous
then.
one. I
I
did. I
think
did.
what
You're
it is.
right. You're you're right. I had it wrong like
But
2 episodes ago.
technically, since we can't put up the other one, we can make this one
That's
50
true. That's
or
true.
whatever.
Actually, I might do that. But either way, we've been doing this for about a year. It's been interesting. It's been fun, but it's been a learning experience. So and we're just getting started, guys. So don't worry. Anyway, thank you guys again for being here. I'm about to bring up our special guest, Tommy Thornburgh. Tommy, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Congratulations on your 60th podcast.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Which
I appreciate
number is
it. Yeah, I was
it?
50
Be more
something.
than 50 because we did do a we did 21 days on my own personal page before we were able to go live over here.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it could
Awesome.
be more
And
if we wanted it.
congratulations. That's fun.
But thank you. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And you know what? What do they say? People usually don't make it past like 20, maybe, or something
I think,
like
yeah,
that.
I think it's closer to even like 10.
It's
I
like,
think like
right.
10 getting posted is like less than 1% of people that put out one or something like that. It's
Yep.
crazy
Yep.
number. So congrats.
Yep. It is. And it's all about consistency. And it's really, and I'll say this, it's really not that hard. It's really not that hard. I mean, there's some things that are can be a little bit tedious, like editing, like if you're not familiar with that, but you can find people to help you edit. You know what I mean? Like for
Fiverr.
real. Yeah, like legitimately, it's not that bad. And there's ways to go about it. I actually learned something really interesting from somebody who's got over 100,000 subscribers. He told me there's something called vidIQ. I don't know if you've heard of vidIQ, but you can use something like a vidIQ to find out what people are searching for, like what kind of content, what is in demand right now, what are people looking up, and then what you do is you start posting shorts and clips and just sort of blast the different channels with that content. And that way you're getting more than just YouTube's algorithm. You're getting actual Google searches and, chat
Nice.
GPT searches and things like that. So
All
really
right, let's
interesting.
wrap that up.
Yeah. Really interesting. Tommy, really appreciate you being here. And I know a lot of people know who you are, but for folks who don't know who you are, give us a little rundown. Where do you hail from? What's your business? How'd you get started in all this?
Yeah, so my name's Tommy Thornburgh. Thank you again for having me. I'm excited about this. I started Prime Corporate back in 2012 with my partner Steve Harward.
Mhm.
Since 2012, I kind of joke that we're like an In-N-Out menu and still offer the same things 13 years later. So
Yeah. Yeah.
entity formation, business credit development, tax services, tax filing, and also estate planning. But it's been a wild road. I mean, we started with four of us,
Mhm.
and fast forward to where we are today. We're based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, and we have about 450 employees. We do 9 figures a year, and we've helped set up just under 200,000 businesses since we started the business. So, um,
That's
crazy.
amazing.
I can't
Yeah,
believe
that's
it.
amazing. That's amazing. And so what got you into it specifically? Did you just kind of, was it sort of something you kind of just happened into, or did you already have some previous experience before you started the company, or how did that go down?
So when I turned 18, I went and knocked door to door selling pest control. And so I jumped into the sales and the marketing realm, came back, went to college, and started selling other services on contract work. So there was phone, internet, home security, all the other things.
Right, right.
I kind of joke like I was born in California and then moved to Utah when I was 8, and I've been here ever since. And if you live in Utah long enough, you either knock doors for your church or knock doors for money.
Yeah.
So
I was
I
just gonna
uh,
say.
I knocked
Yeah.
doors for money. And then when I was 22,
Mhm.
um, I ended up meeting Steve at a celebration of life, and he had just barely
Nice.
started Prime. And I kind of joke, it was like a Wolf of Wall Street moment of like, show me a pay stub, I'll quit my job right now.
Right.
So yeah, that's what happened. I mean, we met on a Saturday night at a celebration of life. I started working with him on Monday, and the rest is history. I've been here ever since. When we first started, we were more of a sales and a marketing company where we would
Yeah.
sell the services that we still do and
Yeah.
refer them out to who we thought would be good fits based off of the industry that they were in.
Yeah.
But as we started breaking different fulfillments, fast forward once again, we started merging and acquiring different companies. And now everything that we do is owned and operated by Prime Corporate.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, and you guys obviously are, Pace uses you guys. Pace has talked about you guys, has brought you on, his into his network, and that's how I found out about you, right?
That's
And
right.
that's how we did business. You guys set up a couple of my businesses for me. And I actually went through I'll be honest, like going through the business funding stuff, I actually started with your course, and your guys' course got me introduced to corporate credit, which is a lot of what that discusses. Now, we can talk about that. Obviously, I don't necessarily want to go down that rabbit hole for this one, but it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know, and that at least that at least got me primed, because corporate credit, I feel like, and you can tell me how you feel about this, but corporate credit, I feel like, is good for companies that are maybe a little bit more established, but it is definitely a way to quickly build your paydex, your business credit score, right? And um, that was what jumped me off onto the business credit and business funding road. So it started with you guys. So I thought that was kind of an interesting play, but you guys took care of me, and set up a couple of my businesses. So let's talk about that a little bit, about business structure and business setup, because I get a lot of these questions. I have a lot of questions myself about certain things too. And maybe for someone just starting out, because this is a lot of our audience too, like a lot of people who are just starting out in real estate investing and business in general, what are some of the biggest, for you guys, like what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see that people have about forming an LLC? Like the most common stuff that you guys see?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a loaded question. I mean, out of
Yeah.
all the people that we talk to and all the podcasts and webinars and everything else that I've done over the years, I try and tell people like this can be very complicated for a lot of different reasons. So
Yeah.
how can we simplify it as much as possible, right? And
Mhm.
the reason that I think it's so difficult is dependent on your contacts within your life. So for example, if you're brand new and you're just getting into real estate, if you were to go ask an attorney if you should set up a business entity, they're most likely going to say, it depends, but of course,
Yeah.
protect your assets, separate your
Right.
personal and your business, right?
Right.
You ask that same question to an accountant, you oftentimes get, well, it depends, but why don't you just wait until you're making money? And the truth is oftentimes somewhere in the middle. It's not uncommon to get different opinions. So the way that I like to consider it is set yourself up for success from the very beginning, right? Give
Right.
yourself a solid foundation to work from. And if you're starting as an LLC, it's simple, it's easy, it's very inexpensive, but take three things into consideration. One, privacy and protection. How much privacy do you want? How much protection do you need based off of your net worth?
Yeah.
Number two, tax benefits, profit or loss, good or bad. How do you put yourself in a better position? And number three, credibility. Show yourself as a legitimate business, not only to your clientele, but also to banks and lenders as you're going out and securing additional funding, like you mentioned.
Yeah, which is a big one. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, the banks and your customers, what's one of the first things they're going to do if you, especially when you walk into a bank and go, give me money, uh, they're going to want to know if you're a legitimate business or not. That's
Yep.
one of the first things they're going to start looking at. So for me, let's just say this. For me, when I started, I didn't have any properties, but because I was set up through your guys's structure, we had a holding company and then a subsidiary, right? So the holding company owns 100% of the subsidiary, right? And basically just a member of the subsidiary is the way
Right.
that structure worked out, which for anonymity purposes, that's great, right? I can put a property in that subsidiary and it would be protected from an anonymity standpoint, right? But for business funding, not so great, right?
Not ideal.
Not ideal,
Correct.
right? So and that's that's part of what you guys discuss with customers too, but it depends on all what you need, right? It really just depends on what you need. For me, when I first started, did I need to have a holding company? Was it necessary for me to have a holding company and build this anonymity structure from the get-go? Some people would say no, but I would say that because it was set up, because it was structured that way, when I did get my first property and put it into my subsidiary, it was simple, right? it it it, it wasn't a heavy lift, let's say, right?
Totally. And once again, this is like exactly what I had mentioned is a really good point. And I'm happy you're bringing this up. Everyone's situation's different, right? And the reason that I still do believe that starting with a holding company is beneficial. And
Mhm.
by the way, for anyone that is newer, what is a holding company? And not all states are created equal when it comes to corporate law in general.
Yeah.
So Delaware and Wyoming tend to be the best when it comes to anonymity or privacy.
Mhm.
We set up a lot of them out of Wyoming. My holding company's out of Wyoming. I know yours is as well.
Mhm.
Um, the reason that that's a benefit is when you set up the holding company first, it owns the subsidiary and you go do business out of that subsidiary. The ownership shows that if something was to happen, the owner is that Wyoming company where
Mhm.
your name is not publicly listed,
Right.
right?
Right.
Where if we were to do it the opposite way and just set up the subsidiary, you would be the owner. And if you were to want to go back and change that, the history would still show that you
Yep.
were the previous owner. So
Yep. Yep.
starting as the holding company is beneficial. And
Yep.
if the goal is to build business credit, having a separate funding entity that you're building the credit off of to lend to the other entities can be a benefit that way.
That's exactly what we're doing. That's exactly how we did it. We created a credit funding entity that is shows that we are it's essentially it's under the holding company, but we are shown as the 100% owners of credit funding entity, right? So when we walk into the bank, um, they don't have a question of, like who actually owns this, right? And actually I should specify that it's not under the holding company. It's a separate, I'm sorry, it's outside of the holding company. It's a separate entity outside of the holding, and we're 100% owners of it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, and yeah, and again, that makes a huge difference when you're going in there and asking for business funding. And before I started on the business funding route, I remember I walked into a bank and with the current structure, with the anonymity structure, it happened to be Farmers and Merchants. And because of Farmers and Merchants Bank and who they are, they're very it was kind of interesting. They didn't quite understand the structure, and I was really surprised. Their internal folks, when I showed them, my subsidiary and showed them the holding company information, they didn't like the fact that it was set up that way. And honestly, that's just because of who Farmers and Merchants is and the kind of businesses that they deal with. They deal with usually small mom and pops and sole proprietorships for the most part. So that's who their people are trained on, right? That's the kind of business structure those people are trained on. And so when I walk in with my you know, holding company and subsidiary, and they're trying to look at it like who owns this, it raised some red flags with them. You walk into Chase, Wells Fargo, any of these banks, they're like, oh yeah, cool. Right? Not a big deal.
I mean, I will tell you as well, like I've been doing this for 13 years now, and it has varied drastically. Like, for example,
Yeah.
in the early stages, my first company that I built business credit off of was my Wyoming holding company and had very, very few issues. Fast forward a couple more years, we're building off the subsidiary. A couple years ago is where that started to change.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is based off of just the landscape of banking institutions, the economy, like the tax code, entity structure, banking, they're all businesses. So it's going to vary based off of what benefits them. A bank is a business. They make money off of your money. They want to make sure to protect themselves. And if things are going a little bit haywire, they tend to tighten up a little bit. So depends on the bank, depends on the economy, depends on a lot of variables. One other thing I just want to add to that as well. The reason a lot of that is important to understand is back in the 1970s, there was a law passed called the Banking Transparency Act. And when this passed, it said that banks can ask for personal information. So a lot of times if a bank asks you for your address or for your name, it kind of wigs people out a little bit, but they're going to ask for it, and they're going to want to know where to find you if you go delinquent.
In fact, I'm going to set up another bank account. Actually, tomorrow I've got an appointment to go set up another business bank account. And that's one of the things they ask for, right? They want your LLC documents, but they also want your social security. They want your name. They want to know who you are, right? So real interesting. And that's interesting that you started with the holding company. For me, I'm just follow the practice now that basically every quarter, every 90 days or so, maybe not quite every quarter, but every 90 days or so, it seems like it's shifting. Things shift, right?
Totally.
Things change. So let's start here really quick, especially for the new folks. At what point, I think you touched a little bit on this, at what point does somebody actually even need an LLC? Like what, if for example, I'm a real estate investor, is it does it behoove me to start with an LLC? Like just right off the jump?
So this is a very commonly asked question that we get. At the end of the day, you can operate your entire life without an LLC, right? Forever and ever. But very biased opinion. So brace yourselves here for my biased opinion, then we can talk through this. I believe my biased opinion says that everyone should be self-employed to some extent, whether it's a side hustle, side business, full-time self-employment. And the reason I say it is because the tax code is such a joke, right? The tax code's over 70,000 pages, and a lot of them are going to benefit investors and entrepreneurs. So if we know that, if you have the intention of getting into real estate, as the example, why not set it up the right way by forming an LLC to give yourself that legitimacy? Take even startup and organizational deductions because you're investing time, energy, effort, and money to do so. Why not set it up properly from the very beginning? Because it can be very expensive and
Oh
time
yeah.
consuming if you have to go back and unwind it. So
Yep.
I think
Yep.
as soon as you have the intention of being self-employed or the intention of generate revenue, self-employed, why not formalize it
Just
as an
do it.
LLC to keep it simple and easy?
Absolutely. You know, and I wish I could have told my mom that before she started her business like 30 years ago. I wish like, oh man, I swear, and I'm not even joking. The tax liability, just your liability from a tax standpoint, like is just crazy.
I'm sure.
And I've watched what that did with her business. And if she had been set up from from the get-go with an LLC for her business, even though she's retail, she has a retail store, it would have been so much easier for her. So let me ask this, because and we don't necessarily have to go down the tax loophole, but this has always been a question of mine too. Like, what's the difference between forming a business for tax benefits versus forming one for like just asset protection? Is it one and the same, or do you actually have to do you have to look at it from a different standpoint?
Yeah. So from a tax standpoint, the main reason of a business entity is to separate the personal and the business, right? So if you structure yourself as an LLC to get things started, great. As you start to generate income, one of the first things that you're going to want to do is
Mhm.
identify the type of income that you're generating. So if you're generating active income
Right.
and using real estate as the example, let's say you're wholesaling or fix and flipping, you're going to be taxed at the highest rate. The federal rate on active income is between 10 and 37%. If
Right.
you're buying rental properties, you get a break on passive income, you're taxed between 0 and 20%, and there's
Interesting.
no self-employment tax. So, using
Interesting.
your mom as the example, if that LLC was changed to an S corporation, you can change that tax election of an LLC.
Right.
And that likely would have been a huge benefit for her where she could have paid herself a salary or a distribution
Yep.
and then avoided half of the self-employment tax,
Yep.
which is Medicare, Social Security, ends up saving
All of
about
it.
7%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're in California, they're already charging you for the sun to stay up year round. You might as well
Yeah.
make sure you're lowering whatever you can tax wise.
That's you're not wrong. I mean, and again, that's why it makes, and this is what it comes into another question that I have, and that a lot of people ask us, and I'm hesitant to answer it because the question is, okay, look, I live in California. They charge us just to, like you said, to breathe the air. If we
Yep.
want to start an LLC, they're going to charge me $800 a year just for the privilege of having an LLC in California, right? And it's like that. I think there's maybe one other state that does it quite like that.
800's the most by quite a bit. There's
Yeah,
Illinois, Massachusetts, you get into the $400 or $500 range, but
yeah, still
California is
high. That's
definitely the
still
most
high,
expensive.
right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So 800 bucks. Yeah,
Colorado's $20.
yeah.
Utah's
I
20
mean,
bucks, right? Every state's so different.
it's crazy. So people a lot of times are trying to figure out ways. Look, I live in California. I don't want to start another LLC in California. Can I go start an LLC say in Wyoming, just another subsidiary in Wyoming? But at the same time, if you're doing business in California, you're still gonna have to foreign file. You're still gonna have to. There's not a lot of easy ways to get around that. Is kind of the point. So what I say to people is it's always best to form the LLC wherever it is you are and that you're doing business. I mean, that's always been the advice I've been given. I don't know what your feelings are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in a lot of ways. The example that I like to use is professional athletes.
Yeah.
And the reason I like to look at this is like if you're a professional basketball player and you play for the Lakers and then you go play a game against the Knicks and then you go play a game against the Hawks, like those players are still responsible for where they're generating income. Their taxes are very complicated for that reason. If
Yeah.
you own properties in 5, 10 different states, you need to show where that income is coming from.
Yep.
But where you reside for 6 months and a day is where your residence is considered. And whatever state that is, they're going to want to make sure they get a piece of
Yep.
the income that's being generated.
Yep. So and like trying to get around that. I mean, there's case law around this. Like if it's found that the whole reason you structured your LLC or your business in the way that you did to simply avoid your obligation, your tax obligation in the state that you live, they can prosecute you just for that, right?
Yeah.
What
And that's, I mean, that's where it's like, even going back to my point of why not set it up
why not
properly
center
from the
right? Yeah.
beginning?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, living in California, it is what it is. There's pros and cons no matter where you're located.
Yeah.
If you're worried about $800, I think you're in for a pretty rude awakening being self-employed in general.
Oh
If
yeah.
that's the cost of doing business, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it is what it is to a certain extent. And I think it's
Yeah.
good for you though, or anyone to know what they're signing up for and having
Yeah.
that guidance and understanding what the actual pros and cons and cost is going to be
Yep.
probably relieves a couple headaches as you're actually building and scaling your business.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And my partner Mark and I talk about this a lot. It's like, if something's a few $100s or if something even is like in the thousands of dollars, it's like those are pretty easy decisions, right? Those should be relatively easy decisions to make, right? It's not until you get into the tens of thousands, right? Especially in real estate investing. If we're talking about real estate and specifically, it's like that's when it's maybe worth your time to start thinking about about it a little bit more. But again, it depends on your situation, right? It depends on where you're at.
Yep.
So, um, quick question. Can you share maybe a real world example with us, something that's maybe, sticks in your mind of someone who actually structured the LLC right from the beginning and it paid off like big time, maybe later on?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna tell the story of Pace. This is one of my favorite stories.
Okay.
I
Love it.
don't tell it. I don't tell it nearly as well as he does,
Yeah.
but I'll share it to the best of my ability. He tells this story. I call it the Saran wrap story.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. I've heard this
you've
story. Yeah,
heard
yeah.
this?
Go for it though.
It's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
So Pace has got the holding company, the Wyoming, the subsidiaries. He's got a very complex structure.
Mhm.
But at one point, there was a lawsuit that he got served with because of mold being in one of the properties that he had owned.
Mhm.
And his wife had gone on their TikTok and found out it was an April Fool's joke. And what the April Fool's joke was that his wife wrapped the toilet with saran wrap. And when he went to the bathroom, they ended up pulling the saran wrap off and flushing it down the toilet. It then flooded the bathroom. And they,
Yeah.
after not cleaning it up, wanted to try and sue Pace. So
Right.
there's examples like that I could go on and on for days.
Yep.
The flip side to that story is another client who I won't share the name, but I know that you know them, lives in Florida.
Mhm.
And I met them at a real estate event in Florida, matter of fact. And they came up and they said, "Hey, I got to tell you real quick. When I first started, I said, I'm setting this up myself. I'm doing everything myself." And so they set up an LLC on their own, Secretary of State out of Florida, Sunbiz.
Mhm.
And 3 a.m, there's a hurricane that hits Florida. And the tenant ends up showing up at the house after looking up the LLC and seeing who it was and their address being tied to it. And they're banging on the window. "Why didn't you pay the power bill? Why didn't you pay the electricity?" There's a hurricane going on. The power's out.
Yeah.
So at that point, his wife was like, "Get out of real estate. We have one property. This isn't worth it. We've got 2 kids." He's like, "Hold on. I heard these crazy dudes talking about holding companies and Wyoming and everything else." So once we ended up setting it up for them and they had the privacy and the protection, they've really grown and scaled and turned it into an amazing operation. So
Yeah.
the good,
Yeah.
the bad, the ugly, set yourself up with the thought in mind of it's not if you get sued, but when you get sued. And as depressing as that sounds, you're going to do things a little bit different if you're in the middle of one of those situations.
Yeah, I would say you haven't been in business long enough if you haven't been sued at some point, or you're just not doing well enough. I don't know which one it is. It's probably a little bit of both, but you're eventually
My
gonna get
first
sued.
lawsuit was my very first rental property that I purchased. I own
Oh
77
wow.
doors of real estate.
Yeah.
The very first rental property that I tried to purchase ended up in a
Wow.
lawsuit because of a dispute with the builder. So
Wow.
you never know. It
Yeah.
was a great learning lesson. There's no doubt about it, but it tied
Yeah.
up money for 3 or 4 years, and it was a real nightmare for sure. I
That
would have done
sucks.
things differently, long story short.
And that was that because you didn't have the anonymity, or was it, would you want to share a little bit about that? Or
Yeah,
was it?
I'd be happy to. I mean, I knew, liked, and trusted the builder. I had known him for years. He had this really cool opportunity where I had to purchase the land. They were going to end up building it. We had agreed on a $400,000 purchase price.
Mhm.
Ended up taking him 2 years. So by the time that it was ready to hit the market, it had already increased in value. He wanted 500 or 520. I can't even remember.
Oh, so he was trying
And
to change the purchase price on you, or oh
which
wow.
one of the
Yeah.
big mistakes that I made um, was trusting and liking and handshake deals. I'm really, really good at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Me too.
having a contract in place that can be more a way to hold each other accountable to a
Yeah.
positive relationship.
Yeah.
On the purchase price, it was TBD, to be determined, but there was a very clear handshake. So my fault.
Yeah.
But guess what? I own the land. So if the property value went up, so did the land.
Yeah.
And if he wanted that house, he was going to have to buy the land back from me. And that's where the lawsuit came into play.
Yeah.
Long story short, I should have just paid 520 because it's worth over $1 million now. So here we are.
Yeah.
We live and we
Wow.
learn, you know?
That's amazing. No, you know what? And by the way, your story with the Pace story, I'll add a little bit to that. So, and one of the points that he makes in that story is that when the lawsuit started ramping up and they were all called into court, right? Pace was able to watch the court proceedings from a monitor. So he wasn't actually physically in the courtroom, his attorneys were there, but he was watching on a monitor. And the individual, the woman that tried to bring this lawsuit, she was in the courtroom legitimately screaming, "Who owns this property? Who freaking owns this property?" You're talking about, this was a crazy person that wanted to get a bunch of free money for something that they caused, something that was clearly their fault, and they got caught red-handed. And she didn't like the idea of that. But because Pace had his structure set up for anonymity, he did not have to be physically in the courtroom, nor did they have to share who the person was that owned the property to that person.
Yeah,
So you
he
talk
showed up
about,
to the court date with his screen off and his name as the
yeah,
LLC name.
yeah.
But
I love it.
it's really, really interesting. You know, whether you own one property or 100 properties, a lot of times each tenant thinks that you're a bazillionaire and doesn't realize
Of course.
the
Yeah.
cost of what it takes to run and operate each one
Right.
of these properties. And
Right.
I think it's a good example of just making sure that you cross. The other thing that's really interesting that I've found over the years,
Mhm.
there's two really. So one of my favorite books is called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman.
I love that book. Yeah.
I
Good
love
one.
it because he does such a good job identifying visionaries versus integrators.
Yeah.
Visionaries can be a little bit reckless where they just go and they make money out of thin air and they're running hard and running fast.
Yeah.
Where integrators are a little bit scared of their shadows sometimes. They're very detail oriented, but they're scared of not crossing a T or not dotting an I.
Yeah.
And I think for either or, the integrator can provide more peace of mind for protection and separation. The visionary, it can provide them with bumpers on the walls as they
That's right.
continue to make mistakes. And
Pansy's like, you don't say.
yeah, right.
Yeah. No,
Everyone can identify a little bit with which personality they're a little bit more aligned with.
Yeah, and my partner Pansy, and if she wants to come back on, she's working right now. But I really put her more into the visionary category for sure. And for me, I'm definitely more on the systems integrator side. I'm a little bit of both, but I would say I definitely fall more on the systems integrator side. And that's 100% how it is. That book literally described, when it was talking about integrators and vision, I mean, it literally described me, and I was like, okay, that's my category then apparently. But you don't, obviously you don't have to define yourself as that. You can be a little bit of both. I think a lot of people are a little bit of both, right? But that's what the integrator is there for, is to kind of rein in the visionary a little bit, right? Like, hey, that's a great idea, but like, let's pull back a little bit and come back to reality a little bit, right? So yeah.
I kind of joke. So Steve, my partner, he's a total and complete visionary. And like you, I'd say I'm a little bit of a mix, but I probably, what's cool about that book is it helps you identify whether or not there's strength or weaknesses. It's also a matter of what you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And Steve is such a visionary that I joke that he's like a balloon and I'm more of the string that pulls him back to reality and day to day.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be where we are, because you have to have someone that's going to push the limits and see where you're going to generate income a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Yep.
But having that counterbalance, I'm probably more of an integrator than I would have been, because I don't need to think in that visionary lane. He's got it covered for 10 people.
That's great. And I mean, and again, that's what we do. And like, my other business partner, Mark,
Yeah.
it's about making sure he doesn't jump out of the plane without a parachute, right?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
really,
Totally. Yeah. I know Mark. How's he doing?
he's doing great. He's doing
Tell him
great,
I
man.
said hi. That's
He's
good. I'm happy to hear that.
we're yeah, I mean, we're chugging along. Look, we've all got struggles. We're all dealing with one
Of
thing or
course.
another, right? But that's what we're all here for, right? We're here to get through that struggle together and come out shining on the other side, right? Eventually.
Totally.
So
100%.
no, but Mark's doing well. Mark's doing well. And look, we've learned a lot.
Something I was gonna say, I'm definitely more the visionary, and I could keep quite a few people busy if people will stop and
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yep, you can. She definitely can. Absolutely, like a 100%. So let's talk about something really quick, and I know we're getting towards the end of the show, but I want to talk a little bit more about anonymity. So like when people hear anonymous LLC, right? Because this is one of my questions when I first started too, is like, what does that even mean? Like, what does that actually even mean, right? And maybe you can discuss that a little bit, in a little bit more detail. Like,
Yeah, it's really interesting timing that you asked this question as well, because another thing, things are constantly changing, like we have talked about throughout this entire show here. But FinCEN, if you remember a year ago, there was a big fuss on BOI.
Yep.
And whether or not you were going to have to log your information into a government portal on who the owners were, which felt like it was a little bit of an invasion of privacy or going to ruin that anonymity. It's back. FinCEN's back. So not necessarily in the sense of BOI, but real estate specifically, this is supposed to go live March 1st. So Sunday.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Where any properties that you own that are under an EIN LLC in a residential area, I believe it's 1 to 4 units, or even land that is planning on being a residential area, will have to report with FinCEN who those owners are. So the one thing about FinCEN is most of the time it's for their use and government use.
Yeah.
So the whole point of privacy and protection, I always tell people, my Wyoming holding company doesn't even do any business. It owns my other businesses. So if I have a slip and fall on one of my properties, they're going to see that the owner is that Wyoming holding company where my name is not publicly listed.
Right.
On the flip side, it separates out the other avenues of, everyone tells you not to put your eggs in one basket, but no one tells you what baskets to put the eggs in, right? So the whole point is just making sure that I don't need them to see that Tommy Thornburgh is the owner and my address. I don't care if you know it, but I don't know a lot of these tenants. I've got several, I've got 12 properties in Missouri, and I've never even seen these properties. They look more like meth labs than they do properties, if we're being honest. So I don't know who's renting them. My cousin is the property manager on those ones.
Yeah.
Having that privacy and giving yourself the protection, call it peace of mind, call it whatever you want. I think it's a real benefit to have that additional layer of protection as well.
Yeah. So essentially, and from my understanding of it, it's literally your name is not plastered all over the LLC. That's really what it comes down to, is your name, your address, personal information is not plastered all over that LLC. If somebody, obviously, look, if an attorney or somebody really, really wants to find out, there are ways to do that, but if you've got it structured correctly, it's going to protect you from a lot of that stuff anyway, right? So if somebody wants privacy in their business ownership, like, we've talked about this, but is business anonymity the only like way for most of the ultra wealthy? Is that pretty much what you see across the board? I mean, obviously there's so many different structures we could talk about, but like, do you see that most of all, like people are really most interested in that anonymity from the get-go?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the times the way that we see it is people will utilize trusts.
Yeah.
People will utilize holding companies. People will utilize multiple entities.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and you know, this could be a fault once again, and why I find myself in these friend deals and handshake deals as often as I do is
Yeah.
I think for the most part, people have pretty solid intentions. And I think people
Yeah,
are looking to
that's
make an
true.
honest dollar. You know, I don't think that people are overly malicious. However, I've been proven wrong as well. But I've done a lot more good business than I have bad. And it's the bad that always stands out because those are the lessons that really stick with you.
Yeah.
And I think that if you were to go do 10 deals, if one of them was to go south, it's going to be the one that stands out where you still
Yeah,
had
of
9
course.
wins.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
why not once again give yourself the privacy and the protection, focus on the tax benefits, give yourself that credibility. And I
Yeah.
use myself as the example of, it's my first rental property. I know, like, and trust the guy. And I end up going and purchasing it under my name as opposed to the way that the holding company and the subsidiary and everything else. And real big learning lesson at 22 years old on my very first rental property that I was trying to purchase. So
Yeah.
whether it's your first, your 10th, your 100th, focus on that privacy protection and utilize the tax code for what it's worth
Yeah.
to keep more money in your corner. I think that's what it's all about.
So I think one of the things that I've learned about in a lot of this is you hear about piercing the corporate veil a lot, and that's in a sense like when you get into a lawsuit or if you get into certain types of lawsuits, that's one of the things that can happen if you're not structured properly, right? If you haven't been doing things correctly from the onset, it gives the judge a jumping off point, let's say, to say, you know what, let's open this up and see what's really going on with this LLC, right? Let's now you can essentially your corporate structure, your corporate veil, what's protecting you from a tax standpoint, not necessarily anonymity per se, but from a tax standpoint, they can pierce that corporate veil. Can you like how do lawsuits typically expose some of these poorly structured businesses that you've seen? Like, do you have some maybe examples you can share with some of the newer folks?
Yeah. So one of the examples that I'll share again, someone that you know, and we won't share names
Well,
here,
sure,
but
it's all right. Yeah.
I'm sharing a lot of people that you know because I'm trying to keep it within the real estate realm. We do all
Yeah, yeah,
sorts of businesses, right?
yeah, yeah,
And one of the big things that we do is when we set up these entities for people, we oftentimes are doing the renewals for them as well.
hmm
And we usually charge $100 to do it, $50 to do it, depending on what it is and what's going on. But we had a client one time that wanted to do it themselves. So they went on to the state, they renewed their own entities. And when you do that, guess what? You got to sign for it. So
yeah,
instead of having someone sign for it, they're signing for themselves and quote unquote piercing that corporate veil.
yep,
So
yep,
how can you keep your name off of that holding company? How can you keep the holding company as the owner of the subsidiaries? And how can you give yourself the benefit of the doubt? Now, if a lawsuit was to happen, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get sued or that no one can find out who you are. Because if a lawsuit happens, they can still ask who the owner is and they can go through the discovery phase of getting
yeah,
that figured out.
yeah.
But I'd say it's more a matter of protecting your day-to-day privacy than it is doing business the right or wrong way.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. So obviously, from in the long term, your day to day business operations and avoiding those crazy tenants and things like that is probably why you want to be structured from the onset in a way that's going to protect who you are, your anonymity. Um, well, look, I
I
mean, we're
one
getting
one more thing I just want to show for anyone that does watch on YouTube or
yeah.
anyone that can see this. I want to share this real quick. I share this visual
Oh,
often
I love it. Yeah.
of up top, everyone should have an estate plan, trust, will, living will, power of attorney. If you don't have one today, it doesn't mean you need one tomorrow. Put it on the to-do list as you build your wealth or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But from there, you can see how this holding company is either owned by the trust or the beneficiary of the trust. And then the holding company owns these subsidiaries as you build these multiple streams of income.
Yep.
And then bringing this full circle on what you were talking about earlier,
The
you
funding
see how I
entity.
have the
Yep.
funding entity separated out
Yep. Yep. Yep.
so
Yep.
that you can build business credit. So if you're building business credit, I always tell people when you're generating income, let's say you're making money right here out of a property, it goes up to the business and out to you. If
Right.
you're lending money, it goes over to the other business or whatever you're lending money to and down to the property. So over and down for lending, up and out for income. And that can also keep you a little bit more organized.
Actually, can you bring that up for me one more time?
Sure.
I want to do something with you here on this. I just want to see if we can. Okay, so you kind of drew this out. So you got your funding entity over here. This is outside of the holding company. The holding company is right here. So this
Yep.
kind of exists. They can see who the owner is. You're essentially 100% owner on this one. Like your name, you're 100% owner. Down
Correct.
here, you've got the holding company that owns all of these LLCs. So the holding company is the 100% owner of all of those LLCs, essentially, right?
Correct.
So what you were talking about is if you make some money down here and you want to essentially disperse funds to yourself, it's kind of going up and out, right? In that sort of form, right? And
Correct.
then just so I understand, because this is more from my understanding of it, if you're going to lend money, let's say you make all the money down here, you want to lend money to one of these other LLCs, it goes up and over, right?
And then, yeah, then that LLC would go down to whatever property or whatever investment you're making.
Got it,
So
right?
over
Like
and
let's say you
down.
lend, right. And
Yep.
then it
There
would
you
go to
go.
whatever property that you've got in that LLC over there. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so who is if this is the trust here, right? And everything's kind of underneath the trust, you got your will, living will or will. And does the trust own 100% of this holding company? Is that how that's structured?
It can be the trustee. There's trustees,
Oh, I see.
beneficiaries, grantors.
Yeah.
So, for example, because I'm still in this wealth building phase of my life, I
Yeah.
have it as the beneficiary. So if something was to
Got it.
happen to me, then it would all roll up as the
As a
beneficiary into the
beneficiary.
trust
Got
where
it.
I've identified I want my wife, my girls, how I want that thing to be distributed.
Right.
So there's a lot of different options. And what makes this stuff so challenging, it
Mhm.
is very situational. Everyone's
Yeah.
situation truly is
Yeah.
so different. We've done tens of thousands of estate plans. We've set up almost 200,000 entities. Like no two tax returns are the same.
Right.
No two estate plans have ever been the same. So making sure that you identify based off your situation, I think is really important.
And I always say this, it's like if you ask 10 different people what's the right way to do business, you're going to get 10 different answers because there's so much variation on things and there's so many factors that go into it. But it's good to know that there are people out there that know what the heck they're doing. So, um let's go ahead. We're getting towards the end here, but Tommy, I really appreciate you jumping on the show with us and sharing your knowledge with us and it's good to talk to you again. I haven't spoken to you. Tommy and
Yeah,
I've
for real.
I don't know if I've told this story or not, but Tommy and I met at who was it? I forget. It was like Rhea Campbell, maybe. I forget who it was, but there was a meetup that we were at. Tommy bought me dinner, man. He didn't even know me that well, and he bought me dinner. So that's the kind of guy Tommy
I
is.
do
But
remember that. I don't even know where we were. I think we might have been in Texas or something. I don't even remember.
yeah, no,
But I remember the dinner. I don't remember where we were either.
we were in California. You had a few drinks. It's all good. I'm not gonna tell
Oh, okay.
anybody.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, but hey, I had a few drinks and Mark took my money in poker as well. I
That's
see how the
right.
two. That's
Yeah,
hey,
that's
that's why you
right.
guys are crushing it. I like what's going on over here.
Well, we didn't want to share that with you, but
I'll have a couple drinks with you and buy you dinner anytime. It's been a
hey
blast.
man,
I appreciate you having me on.
absolutely, man. Well, it's my turn the next time, man. So we're gonna be
Yeah.
out in Squad Up. I don't know if you're planning on being out in Colorado, but we're gonna be at Squad Up. So
I'm
we'll
not going to
stay.
make it this year, unfortunately, but I think Steve will be there. So
All
I'm
right.
really bummed. I had a great time last time. It was a lot of fun.
Well, that's too bad. We'll be at the next one. I hope and plan to be at the one after this one too. So we're gonna keep going to meetups, and I know Pansy will definitely be there. But look, I appreciate you being here and again and sharing your knowledge. And how can people get in touch with you guys?
What I'll do for you is I'll put a link together so that we know you're listening to the Friends with Benefits podcast. I'll get a link put together and send it over to you, and maybe you can just put it in the show notes or something like that.
That's
And
fine.
anyone that is watching this that needs any assistance, we're here to help. So
Yeah.
it'll be a free consultation to speak one-on-one with one of our advisors. And if we can bring enough value to you and your life and your business to earn your business through entity formation, business credit, tax, estate planning, we'd love the opportunity to do so. So I'll text you over a link and we can put it in the show notes if that works for you.
That's
That
fine with
works.
me.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
that's fine with me,
Tommy.
Tommy. I appreciate you, man.
Of
Thank you
course. Yeah.
again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end it. I'm Justin. Pansy actually is. I'm gonna bring Pansy back up because she's actually back with us. She got done with her thing. But
I'm actually on the road.
okay,
So.
well, that's all right. Don't look at the screen. Drive.
I'm not. I'm driving.
All right. Well, I'm
So.
Justin. This is Pansy. This is Friends with Benefits podcast. Thank you again. This is episode 52, and we're gonna do a 53. We'll be back next week. We will see you again soon. Thank you, guys.